So picture this, you've just boarded your dream cruise. It's set to sail to the perfect destination that you've always dreamed of. Suddenly the captain of the ship or the cruise director gets on the loudspeaker and makes an announcement. Fortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, this cruise is now going somewhere else. Pretty annoying, eh? Unfortunately, things like this do happen, and in this video I'm going to go over everything that you need to know about when and why cruise itineraries change and if there is any recourse for it. It's Danny here. In the last few months of last year, in Australia there were reports of a lot of cruise lines itineraries being changed at the last minute and things happening like cruise ships missing ports and destinations. The one that probably made the most headlines was P&O Australia's Pacific Adventure not only missing some of its ports in New Zealand, but having the whole cruise redirected away due to contamination on its hull, and the New Zealand authorities not permitting the ship to enter the waters unless it was cleaned up. Unfortunately, when P&O went to clean the hull, the waters were considered too dangerous for the divers and they couldn't complete the job, so the whole entire cruise had to have its itinerary changed while all the passengers were on the ship. As sucky as it is, missing the occasional port is unfortunately a part of cruising that you need to take into consideration. If you've done a few cruises and haven't missed at least one port for whatever reason, head to the casino because you're extremely lucky, or maybe don't because your lucks might run out. P&O's Pacific Adventure hasn't been the only cruise ship to miss a port though. Royal Caribbean's Ovation of the Seas has missed ports recently in New Zealand due to an area that they were going to dock at being too rough. And the Quantum of the Seas has had its itineraries changed from Airlie Beach to the opposite direction and went to Sydney because of Cyclone Jasper. These are just some of the examples that happened in Australia recently, but it doesn't happen just in Australia, it happens everywhere. In the US, in December 2023, the MSC Meraviglia was changed from the Bahamas to Canada due to bad weather, so a huge change for them as well. As you can see, it happens everywhere. So knowing that, is there a minimum time limit on when a cruise company can notify you when they're cancelling a port? The simple answer is, while cruise lines will try to give you as much notice as possible, it can unfortunately happen at the very last minute. Even so close that it can happen when they're about to let passengers off the ship. This happened to me when I was on the Carnival Splendor in January 2023. One of our days on Mystery Island was cancelled when they were testing the tenders, just after we had dropped anchor. Unfortunately, the waters were just too rough, making getting on and on the tenders too dangerous for the passengers and too hard for the crew to control. While that was extremely disappointing, it's pretty understandable that safety comes first and it's better to miss an island rather than risking something happening to the passengers or crew. So what are the reasons why a cruise ship would miss a port? First and foremost, the safety of the passengers and crew is the biggest reason. Things like the weather being just too bad, like a cyclone or a hurricane in that area, or the tides and waves just being too harsh against the ship. Other things like civil unrest or a war can get a ship to change its itinerary straight away. Other things like laws and regulations changing in a country and the ship not being able to follow those laws for whatever reason will cause a change. Other things like medical emergencies on a ship can make an itinerary change. Also things like maritime emergencies when the ship has to help. This list can just keep going. If you're thinking that you didn't actually agree to any of this, you actually did. Like everywhere else in the travel industry, you did when you booked the cruise. And like everything else with the terms and conditions, no one actually reads them. So let's see what some of the cruise companies actually say in the contract. Carnival Cruise Line's Clause 2 of the contract says that the cruise line's itineraries can't be guaranteed. P&O says the same thing. Royal Caribbean's Clause 36 says that they can't guarantee an itinerary. Norwegian Cruise Line's Clause 17 says the same thing and gives examples of why that might be. These are just 4 examples from the cruise companies, but if you check any of the other cruise lines, they will have a similar wording in their contracts. So are you entitled to anything if an itinerary is changed or cancelled? That all depends on when or if your cruise is cancelled. On P&O and Carnival, which have the same wording, if the itinerary is changed before the cruise, you can accept the new itinerary, get a future cruise credit, or cancelling altogether for a refund. But if it's changed during the cruise, you might not be provided any compensation at all. Royal Caribbean is unfortunately similar. As for Norwegian, it looks like to be the same. Usually though, if an itinerary is changed for a missed port during a cruise, you might actually get some cruise credit for good faith, but that isn't always the case. So what happens if you've booked a shore excursion? Don't worry if you've booked one through the ship. The money you paid for the shore excursion will be returned to you. but if you've booked through a third provider, you might want to check what the policy is. Here's something else as well. If you have cruise insurance, something to check out is if they cover for a port change or cancellation. Sometimes you can claim it back and get some money back if the itinerary was changed depending on the clause of the insurance. If they do, they usually just need proof, which the cruise will usually provide you. It'll look like this. One last thing to mention as well, if you're booking a cruise and the destination has someone that you know and you're planning on visiting them, the best you should do is tell them that you will probably see them, but don't get theirs or your own hopes up. The same goes for booking anything special in a port. If it's that important, I wouldn't book a cruise to get there, I would make other arrangements. If you're wondering what some of the other things your cruise contract mentions when you sign up to a cruise, check this video out here. And as always, thanks for watching.